Hello everyone, and welcome to our webinar on the Project and Portfolio Management Journey Part 1, or as we like to refer to it, Surrendering the Spreadsheet. This is the first of a three-part series on Project and Portfolio Management. My name is Neil Mefford, and I'll be your moderator for today's session. In today's webinar, we will cover three topics. First, we want to get you a better understanding of who Covestic is and why we are uniquely positioned to be your partner for a ServiceNow PPM implementation. Second, we want to give you an overview of the ServiceNow PPM Suite. And third, we'd like to provide you with guidance around where you should start your PPM journey. The ServiceNow PPM Suite is a set of powerful tools that can help transform your organization's PMO, but starting with too much change too fast can cause severe organizational heartburn, and worse, stop a PMO transformation in its tracks, almost as fast as a lack of sponsorship. Today, we will not only share our recommended approach for a ServiceNow PPM implementation, the journey if you will, but we will provide a live demo of our recommended start to this journey. Before we get started, let me introduce the team. As I previously mentioned, my name is Neil Mefford, and I'll be your host for today's webinar. My role at Covestic is Director for Client Delivery, and I have over 20 years of IT industry experience, specializing in the delivery of enterprise software development and systems integration projects, as well as helping companies establish sound demand management, project management, and portfolio management processes. Joining me today is Lynn Reynolds, who will provide you an overview and demo of the ServiceNow Project and Portfolio Management Suite. Lynn has over 18 years of public and private IT industry experience, including project and vendor management, and over 11 years of ITSM process design, process improvement, and delivery experience. Lynn is ITIL Foundations, PMP, and Scrum Master certified, as well as a certified ServiceNow implementation specialist. As we go through today's session, if you have any questions regarding what is being presented, please feel free to type your question into the question box located on your screen. We'll do our best to answer questions at the end of the session, but if for some reason we are unable to get to all of the questions, we will follow up via email. Also, the contents of this webinar will be posted on our Covestic website at www.covestic.com for playback or sharing with other members of your organization who are unable to attend today's session. With that, let's get started. Since its inception in 2001, Covestic has garnered a reputation for providing superior consulting services to our clients. We are headquartered in Kirkland, Washington, and employ over 250 senior-level consultants, averaging more than 15 years of professional consulting and IT operations experience. And we have been delivering service management services since 2001. Covestic's expertise is organized into three practice areas. Our IT operations services practice focuses on developing, standardizing, and operating IT operations functions, including cloud and enterprise infrastructure, security operations, applications administration, and operations build and run. Our project delivery services practice focuses on providing project leadership to deliver complex IT projects. Covestic's experience in project management ensures compliance, quality, and that timing of projects and deliverables align with our clients' lifecycle practices. Finally, our IT service management practice focuses on assessing, defining, and implementing optimized IT service management solutions, with ServiceNow being our only service management solution partnership. Covestic is a unique partner in that we combine deep ServiceNow platform expertise with a specialized practice area focused on creating PPM solutions and project delivery. Within our service management practice area, we perform service management assessments and roadmaps, education and training, process design and implementation, ITSM ServiceNow readiness planning, and ServiceNow implementation and integration services. We also have a ServiceNow developer on-demand support service that we offer to our customers on a subscription basis. Due to our long-standing service management practice that predates ServiceNow, Covestic is a true professional services firm that partners with our customers to design and implement solutions that meet requirements, minimize custom development, and optimize scalability. With that, I would now like to turn the presentation over to Lynn to talk to you about ServiceNow PPM Suite, the Covestic recommendations for starting your PPM journey, and to provide you with a live demo of our recommendations for where your journey should begin. Lynn?
Thank you, Neil. Welcome, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. Just getting set up here. There we go. So what you see on screen is a high-level view of ServiceNow's service strategy elements. The Service Strategy Suite is comprehensive and encompasses project portfolio management, application lifecycle management, and IT financial management. And it manages the entire project lifecycle from ideation all the way through to project closure and financial reporting. The PPM Suite sits within the Service Strategy Suite and is fully integrated into the ServiceNow Cloud, enabling project and operational staff, as well as management and customers, to leverage the same seamless platform across the enterprise. ServiceNow provides companies not only visibility into project-related work, but also non-project work, creating more realistic views of enterprise resource workloads. For companies already using ServiceNow to manage operational work, ServiceNow makes it easy for staff working on projects to get quickly up and running on PPM within an already familiar tool. For companies new to ServiceNow, mastering management of your portfolio lays the foundation for expanding into operational areas. Management has a clear view of what their teams are working on, both projects and non-project work, from within a single system. The tool is a one-stop shop for both executive decision-making across all categories of work, not just projects. From a customer standpoint, ServiceNow is the one and only tool you'll need to interact with from support-related issues to new ideas for project investments. Teams managing projects have the flexibility to create and manage a wide range of projects, from a few small tasks to large portfolios of projects containing complex activities with various task dependencies, and project managers have the ability to use both agile and waterfall phases within a project. Finally, both operational and project metrics may be exposed on a variety of role-based tailored dashboards and homepages. So as we mentioned, ServiceNow PPM has the ability to align project investments and consolidate resource and project data into a single system. Being part of the ServiceNow application portfolio, it manages a seamless end-to-end process for managing work that initiates in operations and that later results in a project. The problem that many organizations face, however, is answering the question, where do we begin? The road to a mature PPM process can often be rocky, and it's important to take manageable steps to demonstrate value in a short period of time. So this demo will focus on our recommended three-phase maturity roadmap, and in particular the 4 key activities within that first phase to help organizations get near-term utility out of the suite. What you see on screen is our recommended PPM roadmap. If you're like many organizations out there, you don't have a good way of capturing requests or demands for new projects. New project ideas are sometimes shared verbally, sometimes they're sent in an email. Worse yet, sometimes they're never captured at all, because the person who has the idea doesn't know how to submit it for evaluation. If your organization is a bit more mature, you may have a regular PMO meeting where business representatives bring new project ideas to the table for discussion. These lists of project ideas often take the form of massive spreadsheets or SharePoint lists, if your idea even makes the list at all. Comparing demand requests against each other is also challenging. There is often yet another spreadsheet or a list of project suggestions to review in order to do comparisons. And finally, when a demand becomes a project, there may be no standard way of managing the project. More lists, more spreadsheets, more PowerPoints are created throughout the project lifecycle to not only manage the project, but to also report out to the PMO or the CIO. I can't tell you how many times I've seen an Excel list of projects with a red, yellow, green health indicator and a current status column. The good news is all of these spreadsheets can be replaced. So all of this can be done with Phase 1 of Covestic's three-phased approach to PPM. The goals of Phase 1 are to collect ideas and demands from the organization, have a repeatable way to decision those demands, to create a portfolio of projects with enough information to support executive or high-level status reporting. And the goals of Phase number 2 are to introduce program management, to enhance project templates to support various projects of various types, and to introduce Agile and Waterfall phase capabilities within projects. The activities of the third phase really close the loop on project budgets, cost management, resource management, time tracking, and planning and managing resources across project and non-project work across the enterprise. Now let's dive deeper into this first phase of your PPM journey and explore the 4 key activities within the first phase to help launch PPM within your organization. Let's play out a scenario. In this scenario, I'm working at a company that's already using ServiceNow for incident, change, problem, CMDB, and service catalog. I recently had an incident come into our security organization, which thankfully they were able to put a workaround in place and quickly get us up and running again. When the security team performed their root cause analysis, they came up with an idea that might prevent this issue from occurring again. The CIO will need to evaluate this need against the other strategic needs of the organization before she approves funding of the idea and officially approves it as a project. So I will now walk you through the generation of that idea, the evaluation of the demand that came from the idea, creating and managing the associated project, and finally, portfolio reporting in the form of a dashboard. So with that, I'm going to end the PowerPoint presentation and go over to ServiceNow. Okay, to start off our live demo today, pardon me, we're going to have a look at ideation. Right now, I've started out on the standard service portal that comes with the ServiceNow instance. This is a collection point where our business users can submit ideas for projects and enhancement requests. On my screen, I've logged in as a typical internal user named Susan Smith. The ServiceNow self-service portal is our users' one-stop shop for all requests and services. This portal is completely tailorable, but for the purposes of this demo, we've not made any changes to the default page. So to get us started, I'm going to start off with submitting an idea. So when I click Submit Idea, it opens up the idea form. This form, like all forms in ServiceNow, is fully configurable, and you can add any fields you like. The important thing to keep in mind is to keep the idea submission form fairly simple, or else you risk your customers not wanting to use it. End users always have the ability to attach a document or additional information about this idea request. So for our purposes, we're asking our end user to enter a title for their idea and a description, and we've added the business justification field to this form as it's a common data input for ideation. So we'll add some high-level information here. There we are. So now that we have some high-level information on the form, I'm going to submit the idea. Once I do that, you'll see that I have a confirmation up in the upper left corner that the idea has been submitted. I also see the number associated with that idea, and I do have a link to click into the idea if I wish to go look at it. I'm going to go back to the main portal page. On the main portal page, you'll see all of the ideas that have been opened by Susan Smith. For our next step, we're going to go to the actual user interface, the ServiceNow user interface, and I'm going to switch gears and impersonate or log in as Diana Temple. So Diana Temple is both a demand manager as well as a portfolio manager for 3 different portfolios. Diana's access to these applications is based on roles and permissions as with elsewhere in the system. And as a demand manager, I can review ideas submitted in order to qualify them as demands we may later want to produce projects for. So if I go under self-service and under the idea application, we will see the new idea that has just been submitted by Susan Smith. I have the opportunity to work with the user to get additional details, to understand what it is they're suggesting. And do keep in mind that the details around this idea will be fleshed out more when it reaches the demand stage. Up in the upper right corner, we have defer and accept. Defer actually will complete or cancel the idea, and it won't move further in the life cycle. Accept approves the idea and turns it into a demand. So for this example, we're going to accept the idea. By accepting the idea, you'll see the demand record has been generated and linked to this idea, and there's a link to the demand record in the upper left corner. If I click the link to this demand record, we'll see that it's been submitted by Susan Smith. The idea and the original idea has been submitted by Susan Smith and when. We'll see that the category has defaulted to strategic, the type has defaulted to project. We'll see that the title of the idea has been mapped to the demand, the description has also been mapped over to the demand, and the business justification has been mapped to business case. We can use this assessment data section to capture some high-level characteristics about this demand, such as high-level financial information, kind of an order of magnitude sizing, and strategic alignment. Other ServiceNow tabs provide other information about other areas, but we're not recommending turning them on until later. We'll get more detail around costs and resourcing in the third webinar. So I'm going to set some high-level information about this demand. You would do this with working with the requester. It's a bit much. We'll give it a perceived impact of medium. I'm going to give it a risk level of high since it is a compliance requirement. And the last thing is we want to associate this demand with a portfolio. And in the case of our example, we're going to associate it with the security operations portfolio. And then we'll also give it an expected start. So let's not start this until after the new year. All right, I think that's everything. So I'm going to save the demand. I did that by right mouse clicking. So once I save the record, a couple other things happen. The financial return is calculated based on the financial characteristics I put in a moment ago. The total costs are calculated, as well as an ROI. You'll also see that stakeholders have been added. Stakeholders are associated with the portfolio selected. And these are the folks that would likely participate in your stakeholder review meeting of demand records coming into this portfolio. Now that I have the high-level information about my demand beyond what came in from the original idea, I'm going to submit it. And what happens next is I would prepare the demand record for review for my stakeholders. If there's any additional information I need to put on here, when I feel the demand is ready for review by the stakeholders, then I'm going to move it to the screening stage. Once I move it to the screening stage, you'll see that calculated metrics have been calculated again based on the criteria up above in the assessment box. And this is going to produce some scored values associated with this demand that we can use for comparison against other demand records. So when I hold my regular steering committee meeting with my stakeholders, I can easily run through all the demands currently in the screening stage. The demands that get approved for further evaluation, I will qualify, and the ones that are not approved, I'll defer. So let's just assume that review with my stakeholders has happened. and I'm ready to pursue this demand record as a potential project. So I'm going to move it to qualify. Later, we can use assessments to manage screening by stakeholders remotely. So now my demand record is in a qualified state, and if I go over to the demand application under the workbench, and I open up the workbench, you see that you have a list of qualified demands. In the top half of the screen, the workbench is split into two panes, and the top half shows these demand records related or compared to one another in the four quadrants, and the quadrants are really based on relative values of value or risk of this potential demand. And then likewise, there's a list of the demands below with their high-level characteristics to be used for comparison. I can actually move the bubbles around on the bubble chart on the demand workbench, and as I do that, the risk and value values actually recalculate dynamically. So this is a visual way to work with your stakeholders and figure out which of these demand records we want to pursue as projects. So I'm going to go back to my demand record that we proposed early on. And if the type is project, you'll notice that you have Create Project under the related links, and you can use this Create Project link to create a project from this demand. So I've now created a project from this demand. This has been approved to move forward, and you'll see a couple of things. You'll see that there's a link to the project just created in the upper left-hand corner, and you'll also see that the demand record has been moved to the approved state. You'll also notice that a few things have come over from the demand record to the project. Oh, I'm going to actually open the project first. Now you'll see some things that have come over from the demand. We've mapped the project name from the demand. We've mapped the portfolio from the demand. We've also carried over the business case, which, as you remember, started out with the idea and moved through the demand to the project. We have carried over the planned start date. And we've also mapped over the perceived planned benefit. So all of those values have been brought over from the demand to the project. And as with every other application in ServiceNow, other fields can be mapped from the demand record to the new project if desired. I also want to point out a couple things about this project. There's several related lists down at the bottom of this record for capturing other information. In particular, there's a way to capture risks and issues about this project. I'm not going to create any issues or risks with this project today, but you will see risks and issues associated with other projects when we get to the dashboard. If you notice in the upper left-hand corner, we have the opportunity to apply a template to this project. Templates allow you the ability to do a couple of things. If you want to have consistent phases or consistent key milestones across the projects in your portfolio, you can drive this in with templates. Your standard ServiceNow instance is going to come with a sample PMI template. I've actually crafted an additional one that's phases and milestones. For the purposes of this demo, we'll go ahead and use the out-of-box sample PMI template. Now, one thing to note when you use a template if you have durations associated with your project tasks, it will honor those durations when you apply the template and actually calculate your end date based on those project task durations. So if you need to adjust the timeline of your project, you can go into the activities that have just been added and adjust those durations. So now that we've created our project and we've associated a template with the project, we're going to go into the Planning console. When I go into the Planning console, I can see the 5 phases that came in from my template. If I click into one of those phases, not that way, if I click into one of those phases, there we go. You'll see the project tasks that have come in also from the template underneath that phase. And those tasks have brought with them their task dependencies. They've also brought in plan duration. And so you can see here on screen, you've got the start of a high-level WBS or a high-level Gantt with the project activities, the phases, the task dependencies, the plan start and end date, and durations. You can adjust these project activities from this view, from this console. You can actually redraw the lines in between the project tasks and adjust your project plan in that way. And you have the ability to move project tasks up and down in the WBS using the arrows as well as indent and outdate activities. So this lets you know that you can build your project plan inside the Planning console, and we'll be digging into that a bit more in the second webinar. All right, so now I'm back on my project record. We're going to look at portfolios a little bit here. I've currently got this project associated with the Security Operations portfolio. If I needed to adjust that portfolio, I would click on the magnifying glass. And that's going to open up the list of portfolios I can choose from. Your ServiceNow instance comes with a list of out-of-box boilerplate portfolios that can obviously all be adjusted. If I needed to create a missing portfolio, create a new portfolio, I would do it by using the New button. And just as a note, you will need to have the IT Project Portfolio Manager role to be able to do that, which Diana Temple has. So here I would fill in this form or any other fields that I want to collect about my portfolio on this form, and then hit Create Portfolio. And I'll have a new one. But for the purposes of our demo, I'm going to go ahead and leave this project associated with the Security Operations portfolio, and I'm going to click into that portfolio to see what else is going on in there. All right, so I've clicked into the Security Operations portfolio. If I go to the portfolio status, this is going to give me a list of all the projects that are associated that are contained within the Security Operations portfolio and some high-level characteristics about each of those projects. So here you see kind of perceived values around risk, cost, scope, schedule, resources, and an anticipated ROI, as well as a calculated % complete associated with all the projects that are within this portfolio. And if I click into one of our records, this is a project record associated with the portfolio, and from here I can again adjust high-level values about this project that then drive this overall view. This is actually the one that we created earlier. Let's go there. So here I can put, again, some high-level characteristics, high-level settings. Around this project, and if I hit update dashboard, it pushes those values down into the lower screen, and then that drives the attributes about each of the projects within this portfolio list. So this can be used to support discussions with your PMO when you want to see how your projects are performing within a particular portfolio relative to one another and which ones possibly need more attention or ones you need to dig into. So last thing I'd like to show you is underneath the project application, we've got the Portfolio Manager dashboard. And again, for the purposes of the demo, I have not tailored this dashboard much from out-of-box at all. You've got open risks that are associated with projects, associated with the 3 portfolios that Diana manages. Again, any open issues associated with projects for the 3 portfolios Diana manages, as well as key milestones. You can see the count of active projects associated with the portfolios that Diana manages, as well as, again, key milestones. And if I click into any of these bars, I can then get to the list of projects that make up that count on the graph to take a look at individual project records. And I think I actually skipped a step earlier. Let me go back here. One other thing I neglected to show you, also within the project record, we can go to the project workbench. And from within the project workbench, this is another view, kind of another graphical view of your project phases. Project tasks are below. And this is the view that can be used to add one of 3 flavors of phase: waterfall, agile, or test, as well as milestones. If I elect to add a waterfall phase, I can add project tasks. If I add an agile phase, I can add user stories for doing Scrum. And if I add a test phase, I can add test activities and test cases. If I click the milestone button, I have the ability to add milestones, including designate key milestones. So there again is another way to continue building out information about your project beyond the planning console that then can be leveraged in your dashboard and also on reports. ServiceNow also offers a very robust reporting application. It's got several out-of-box reports around projects, demands, and portfolios, and those can all be tailored and added. So I think to sum up, ServiceNow allows companies to get a quick handle on their project list, capture high-level characteristics about each project for comparison and decisioning, as well as provide a simple means to capture demand for new projects and consider those demands in a proceduralized way. This approach can quickly meet the goals of most executives who want to begin managing demand and their portfolio, and it lays the foundation for more robust project tracking later. It's a quick, simple approach to getting started with PPM and ServiceNow. So with that, that completes our PPM demo, and I will now turn it back over to Neil.
All right. Thank you, Lynn. Let's see here. There, we should have my screen up now. Hopefully through today's demo, you will be able to see clear benefits of using the ServiceNow PPM solution. ServiceNow PPM can not only replace the spreadsheet you are using to track demands and projects, but it can also be the one and only tool you use in your organization for both project and non-project work. Before we open it up for questions, we'd like to remind you that this is part 1 of our 3-part series on project and portfolio management. Please be on the lookout for further invitations to parts 2 and 3 of our webinar series. In Q1, we will feature the 2nd phase of our roadmap with a webinar titled Planning the Work, Working the Plan. And in Q2, we will present our final PPM webinar of the series, which will be labeled Full Lifecycle PPM, Managing the Enterprise. If you have a question for today's session, please submit it using the question box on your screen. We'll do our best to answer as many questions as possible, but should we run out of time, we will follow up with answers via email. Lastly, if you'd like any additional information, please feel free to send us an email at servicenow@covestic.com. With that, let's get started with our first question. All right. First question I have here is, can I manage my project within ServiceNow? Lynn?
You can absolutely manage your entire project and all the project details within ServiceNow. You can do that, as we saw earlier, by either building out those project tasks inside the planning console, inside the project record itself, or you can also import a project file, say from Microsoft Project, into ServiceNow, and it will honor the task relationships and the task hierarchy, and you can begin managing it inside the project application. And we'll get into more of those details in the second webinar. And then you also have the option of only managing your project at the portfolio level, just at the record level, and not including project task detail. It's your option.
All right. Looks like we have another question here. The second question is, can I customize dashboards by role or login?
Absolutely. You can tailor who can see dashboards in a variety of ways, either by permissions assigned to group, through roles, through a variety of settings. So if you have one dashboard that you only want your CIO to see, or maybe your leadership team to see, separate from, say, the PMO or project personnel, you can have differing dashboards, and they can all be managed through permissions and roles.
Great. Next question here is, can the tool also be used to document and track technical dependencies for the user stories or demands? I'm assuming that's on a specific project.
Technical dependencies. So again, you can have waterfall phases and you can have agile phases. Within the waterfall phases is where you have the project tasks and task dependencies, and then within the agile phases is where you have the user stories. I would actually need to look and see if there can be relationships drawn between user stories and project activities, but they can be contained within the same project file underneath those phases.
And a similar question here, Lynn, came in on, can you use ServiceNow as a document repository for project artifacts?
You can. There's a managed document application within ServiceNow. There's also a very robust knowledge base within ServiceNow, and you can also always attach records or attach files to any record within ServiceNow. So you've got a kind of three flavors, or a variety of ways that you can track your project documentation and associate those files with your project records. It just depends on the particular needs of your organization and what you're trying to accomplish. Yep.
All right. Next question here is, what if I want to track project budgets, costs, and hours in ServiceNow?
So there are several applications within ServiceNow. We really took a look at idea, demand, and project today, but there is also the financial planning organization application, also the cost management application. There's resource planning and tracking. So there's additional applications within the suite that you can use to build out your budget, track your costs, build out your resource plans, and track time, and use those to not only show the cost and hour details with your projects, but also with operational non-project work. Again, that's a little bit more kind of sophisticated management inside the tool suite, and we will get into that into the third webinar.
Excellent. I have one more question here so far, and that question is, what if I don't want to use IDEA and just start with demand?
So we actually encounter this a lot. It's kind of 50-50-ish. We have a number of customers that start with demand or start with IDEA and take that idea all through the life cycle, all through to the project. And then we have other customers that prefer to not start with IDEA and actually just create a catalog item or a web form out on their portal for capturing demand requests or new project requests, and then again following those through the same life cycle up to project. So it's up to the organization what they want to use for their kind of customer-facing intake method, whether they want to start that at idea or start it at demand, and then build out the rest of the life cycle to get you to the creation of a project and managing that project. Either can be done.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Lynn. That concludes today's session. Thank you, everyone, for attending, and remember to keep an eye out for upcoming webinars. Happy holidays.